Welcome back, everybody, to my fourth attempt at my fourth episode. I want to take a moment real quick to thank the folks that I've sent some of these pilot videos to for your feedback. I appreciate it. And I want to invite anybody out there who's listening to let me know in these formative days of whatever enterprise this becomes, what you'd like to see different. As we would say in the military, give me 3 sustains and 3 improves. I want to welcome you to the day, too, in case you're emerging from your nest. Here in the Midwest, it's quite cold, and so that sometimes leads to lazy mornings under the blankets. Or if you're heading down to bed, and the sheets are still warming up and you're having a listen, I hope that you find something relaxing here. Something to think about, perhaps, in your days ahead with quiet consideration and a hot cup of cocoa. But back to today's topic. Today's episode is titled Mr. Hajicek. It's a tribute to a math and science teacher that I had in my youth who said to me something that has, I guess, in a way, it has haunted me throughout my life. I don't think it's fair to say that it's stuck with me or that it's some piece of advice, because Mr. Hajicek leveled a piece of criticism at a teenaged Steve that really shook me up in an important and meaningful way. One day in study hall, our babysitter at the time was this man, Mr. Hajicek, and he interrupted my conversations with the girls in the classroom, which is what I was always up to, and he called me out in front of the whole class, and he said, Steve, I'm really sad about where I think you're going. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he said, I see you in all this glory and potential, but I think 40 years from now, you'll be looking down at a lunch pail on a high-rise iron I-beam somewhere, talking to your construction worker friends about how much you could have done with your life. Mr. Hajicek was an authority figure to me. He was an adult, and he had essentially condemned my future. He had summed me up in a less than ideal. You'll have to remember that college has been preached as the only direction for good people for ages, right? Not the trades, not in hard work. That's starting to change, I think, as people are realizing just how valuable labor is, young people especially. And there I was 5 years later. I was 21, 22 years old, and I was poor because of my own decisions, and I was in jail because of my own choices, and I didn't have anywhere to live. Couch surfing, because I was irresponsible. This once bright star, lauded for my academic ability, and I was too busy smoking cigarettes and drinking beer. And, kind of, how do you say, awkwardly stretching out into the world. And he nailed it. Mr. Hajicek 5 years prior nailed it. I was going to be a do-nothing, know-nothing, easy come, easy go money kind of guy. And I would never have 2 pennies to rub between my 2 fingers. But I'd have a big truck. And maybe some illegitimate children, right? Then I joined the military because of those words. Not directly, but they were in the backdrop, so to speak. And there I was in Iraq, you know, one day covered in blood, bloody hands and feet, boots stained red, just got done mopping up somebody's life in a very real way. Throw down the hydrogen peroxide, get all the spots so that we don't have so we don't have biohazard on the floor for the next batch of 11 bodies that come rolling through. Maybe it was at the end of a 36-hour shift, or maybe I just got done pulling a personal security detail or doing an Overwatch or whatever. Exhausted, broken down, dispirited, thinking back to Mr. Hajicek's words. You're just going to be looking down into your lunchbox, wondering what you did with your life. I was 23, maybe. 24. I think I had my 24th birthday in country. They made me stand on top of a pool table, a dilapidated, broke-down pool table, and with 2 cans of O'Doul's in my hand, singing pina coladas while they threw things at me. Right, it was pretty light hazing. I don't begrudge those guys for that. In a way, I look back at it fondly, right? So to take another 5 years forward, I was out of the Army now. I was a used-up has-been soldier. I was a disabled veteran. I was mentally sick. That was my definition. I would go on to high-risk behavior. I was classic presentation. And I never saw it, which is so strange because I was so educated on the topic. I had spent so many years in therapy. I guess maybe it's not fair because I think I did see it. Cutting myself some slack. I did see it. I didn't see it until after I was doing it. And there was Mr. Hajicek and his words. While I was drinking myself into a coma. You're never going to be anything. One day you're going to look down at your lunchbox and wonder what you did with your life. What haunted me so much about Mr. Hajicek's words in that moment, which he's probably forgotten, is that there was no takebacks. That was it. If I made it to that lunch pail to look down and realize that he was right, there was no takebacks. So I got sober. And I really flailed for 5 years. 5 more years. 28 to 33. I lost friends. I lost all of it. It was so hard. So I got sober and I went back to school. And then I was like 4 years back into school and I was failing out of my classes. I was having a really hard time. My mental health was I was suicidal. 2013. And I want to speak openly about that in public because I want for people who are in that place to know that they can talk about it. Like, I'm nodding my head here. That's so important to me that I'm willing to forsake social niceties and talk about really rough things with that I wouldn't talk about in person with people. There's something strange about the internet and the anonymity that I feel despite my full name being on the front page, right? So I thought about Mr. Hajicek's words, and I thought I had a decision to make, because on the left foot, there was school and a future, and I'm getting better, and I'm going back to the clinic and doing the hard work and climbing out of that pit, rediscovering life, or at least quelling the whispers that it was better not lived. And there was a statement. I don't even think he gets credit for it anymore. He became, in my memory, Mr. Hajicek became an abstraction. I've talked about this before, but in my mind, Mr. Hajicek is perfectly captured as a late 30, early 40-year-old who smokes cigarettes and hides it, and when he speaks and lectures too long, he's got a little white piece of spittle in the corner of his mouth. Captured forever. That was 20 years ago. He's probably an old man by this point. Not an old man, right? But an aging man, filled with his own life's regrets. I'm getting off on a tangent here. This story has a sort of happy ending. So I would get through the summer with his words there, telling me that it was this or that, really, success or failure, and that there weren't takebacks, were not takebacks. So I graduated. And that was just yesterday, although it wasn't. It was half a year ago. And I started to slip again. Something that was different this time were my friends. Many of them are my new friends. Not many, but the proportion of which I give myself to, lend myself to, have helped me to see brilliance. I mean that both in a smarts way and in the way of light. Have you ever seen the bright noon sun dancing on fresh snow? My friends have helped me to see that brilliance in life. So has my education. Study of biology has helped me to discover majesty in the world that I never imagined possible. So, here's the conclusion of my fourth recording attempt. Each attempt was met with kitty cats or going over my time. And this one is no exception. So, I apologize for the length. Thank you for being with me in this. I look forward to hearing from you. And I hope you have a great day. And I want you to think on your way out about Mr. Hajicek's words. Because there aren't any takebacks. And there's something you can do about it. That's what life taught me. It took me 20 years to learn that lesson, even though I had been speaking it from the mount the whole time. You can do something about where you're at. So, do it.